Hello and welcome back to Weeknight Hero. Thank you so much for the kind words and comments, but now is the time for us to get into the real meat and potatoes of character creation. So the first step to that is going to be abilities. Now, abilities are the most misunderstood part of Mutants and Masterminds, in part because without a clear and definite measure of what each point of ability is, people tend to either overinvest or underinvest in their abilities, and it creates problems a little later in character creation. So we'll be discussing them today at length and what they mean for your character. So what are abilities? The closest analog for abilities would be the traditional stats that you would find in D&D. So very similarly, they cover things like strength, dexterity, constitution, though we call it stamina, intellect, awareness, fighting, agility, and the oft-forgotten stat, presence. So in truth, you can look at these as kind of the ability modifiers that you would find attached to the stats. And so we just cut out the whole other point values and stick just with what the modifiers are, because that's how you apply them in game. Now, mechanically, these abilities refer to your natural physiology, biology, and ability to learn, irrespective of powers or skills. So the way I look at it is, if your character were depowered, or if they lost their memory, what natural abilities do they have once all that's gone that are still reflected in the character? If you were depowered but could still lift a car, you have high strength. If you lost your memory but can still be incredibly charming, you have high presence. Because all of these things reflect the natural biological foundations of a character. If your character has a godlike physiology or an alien physiology where they have no corporeal form, their abilities are going to look vastly different than a human character. So my rule of thumb is, if they have a different shape or size or body type than a baseline human that you interact with every single day, more likely than not, they have higher or even lower abilities than what you would normally see on a human. And their character sheet should reflect that. Another big thing about abilities that I want to cover is how they interact with powers and skills. A character with a high fighting ability, so a close combat skill, would be in something like swords, nunchucks, unarmed combat, which means that they are really good at a singular thing. However, a person who's really good in unarmed combat is not necessarily really good in swordsmanship, because skills reflect the amount of training somebody has in a particular style. So time is a huge factor. However, if your character naturally has really good reflexes, naturally able to understand the way the body moves, I would say they have a high fighting ability. So if they really understand martial combat with their high fighting ability, it doesn't matter if they're fighting with their fists or a sword or an axe or anything like that. Their natural ability allows them to pick things up faster than somebody else, so time isn't a factor. So this next part of the video will be going over each of the 8 abilities, what the benchmarks mean, and how they apply to character creation. So the first one we're going to go over is strength, because strength mostly deals with your lifting capacity, athletic skill, and the amount of physical damage that you do to somebody. And as you can see in the document, we have a list of 5 benchmarks, very similar to what I did for power level, where we're dealing with minimal, so those are the negatives, normal, trained, enhanced, superhuman, and beyond superhuman. So the next thing that we're looking at here is stamina. Stamina is the ability to resist external forces, and predominantly it affects your toughness and fortitude skill. So the higher the stamina, the more damage you're going to be able to take naturally, on top of any other bonuses that you provide for your character. Next one's agility. So it's your character's natural ability to be nimble, stealthy, any sort of thing that requires agileness. And this is reflected in it being tied to your acrobatic skill, your stealth skill, and your ability to dodge. Next one we're going to cover is dexterity. So it refers to your hand-eye coordination, your accuracy, and your deftness with handling objects. It comes up predominantly because your ranged accuracy is based off of your dexterity in the form of the ranged combat skill, and also affects the sleight of hand skill and the vehicle skill. Now, its opposite is the fighting skill. So fighting determines your close combat skill or close combat accuracy. It also reflects your parry defense and helps you dodge close attacks. Next up is Intellect, which deals with your intelligence and your problem-solving ability and reflects really key skills like expertise, technology, and treatment. Next up is Awareness, which refers to your perceptiveness, your mental fortitude, and your general common knowledge and wisdom. And through that, it's reflected in the perception skill, the insight skill, and your will defense. Finally, the oft-forgotten skill, Presence, reflects your social skills or your attractiveness and is reflected in deception, persuasion, intimidation, and even the new animal handling skill. Now, as an addendum on the Presence skill, it's less effective in a combat simulator type of game. And I have played games where you remove the presence skill entirely because people want to roleplay their actions and not have it be derived off of a numerical skill or a numerical roll. So if you're looking to save points and do a more roleplay friendly game, it might be a useful alternative. Just remove the presence skill entirely. So where do we go from here? I like to take a look at each ability, and we can get a scratch paper for your character and we'll write down each ability and we'll determine to what level your character needs that ability. So that's the reason why I like to start off with power level in order to determine your general range for your character, and with character concept, because now that you have a fully formed idea of what your character should be, you can now match each of those abilities to a numerical value that you feel is appropriate. And of course, abilities require 2 power points in order to raise it 1 degree. So quickly, some characters might find their total power points eaten up by the abilities unless they're taken care of properly. So take a look at the list, decide what you want, make a note of it, and don't go overboard spending on the abilities, because next week we're going over skills. As always, thank you for joining me. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe if you like what I'm putting out so I can put out more content. Check out the DriveThruRPG store. Check out the blog. Check out the podcast if you want more Mutants and Masterminds content. And as always, I am your friendly GM, Evan, and see you guys next time.